So Arrow has officially ended. The final episode of Arrow ever, the series finale, which is Season 8, Episode 10, and the 170th episode of the show, titled Fade Out, has been released. Arrow is officially over, and this video will be my review, also Easter egg retcon video for the finale. And also, before I get into that, actually, I want to talk about Arrow itself, like a retrospective on the show, because it certainly has had a large impact on my life, and it has at times been my favorite TV show, so I wanted to talk about that before I get into the review for the actual series finale. So, I started watching Arrow around, I think between October and December 2013. I remember it was while the first couple episodes of Season 2 were airing, so I can't really say I watched it from beginning to end while it was airing, so I can't really say, I've been following it for the last 8 years or whatever, but I have been following it since then, and I've been watching it the entire time, in spite of its ups and downs. Specifically, during Season 4, I thought Season 1 and 2 were awesome. Season 3 was a little disappointing, but not terrible. However, Season 4 was so bad that I actually quit the show. I remember not watching the last couple episodes of the season, because after Laurel died, I honestly couldn't care about the show anymore. However, after watching the trailer for Season 5, I decided to give it a chance, and it was awesome, and I'm really glad I did, because if I hadn't done that, I don't think this channel would have existed. I think it was mainly Season 5 of Arrow that got me as invested into the Arrowverse as I was, at that time, because before that, there was obviously Arrow Season 1 and 2 and the Flash Season 1 and 2, but in that exact year, because that was the year I started this channel, I think it was that season specifically that got me as invested in the Arrowverse, or Arrow specifically, as I am at this point. So I do think that I do owe this channel to Arrow specifically, even though it was the entirety of the Arrowverse, and it is the entirety of the Arrowverse this channel talks about. It was originally Arrow that prompted me to create this channel. So because of that, I definitely think Arrow had an impact on my life. This channel has certainly had an impact on my life in a number of ways. So even though Arrow has its ups and downs, I will forever be grateful to the show because of that, and also because it was at times my favorite show while Season 2 was airing, and also when I watched Season 1. And even, I would say, during the first half of Season 3, and then again in Season 5, it was my favorite TV show. Hell, even now in Season 8, which was awesome, it has at times been my favorite TV show. So because of that, because I do owe some things to Arrow, it is sad that it is ending, but I do think that it is time to end. I do think that it's good that they're ending on a high note with another great season in Season 8, and I don't think they really should have gone longer, so I'm glad it's ending at this point. With that in mind, let's get right into the review for the series finale of Arrow. So right off the bat in the episode, we learned that Moira never died, which we did know based off the images for the episode, but this just confirms this. We also learned that Tommy, Emiko, and Quentin never died as well, and basically the only people in Oliver's life that did die and are still dead are Robert and Laurel from Earth 1, as well as probably a couple other people in the flashbacks, which I gotta be honest, this is one of two things in this episode that I really don't like. I don't like the idea of all these characters who had these huge significant deaths are just alive again. This is especially true for Tommy, since later we learn that Robert is still dead because he had an impact on Oliver. Without Robert's death, Oliver would have never became the Hood, the Arrow, and the Green Arrow, and then the Spectre. But that's also true for Tommy's death, since Tommy's death is what prompted Oliver to try to stop killing. I think they try to make it seem like Oliver would have done that anyway in this episode, with the flashback showing that Diggle was also trying to convince him to not kill, but I do think that they can't really do that. Tommy's death was the main reason why Oliver stopped killing in Season 2, and while he has killed since then a couple times, it's nowhere near compared to what he did in Season 1, so I do think that Tommy's death was not only significant to who Oliver is, but also it was so significant and emotional that it's just kind of insulting to that death that he was brought back. Similarly, Moira and Quentin, who didn't really have that big of a role in changing who Oliver was, still I do think their deaths should have stayed. Moira's death, I think, significantly changed the likes of maybe Thea during Season 3. Quentin's death significantly changed Laurel of Earth 2 during Season 7 and 8, so I don't think those deaths should have been reversed. And I do think bringing them back is kind of insulting to the significance of those three characters' deaths. The only character I think that it's fine they brought back is Emiko, who I do think that maybe in On Earth Prime she never became a villain, instead becomes the hero she is in the comics, the Red Arrow, which I am glad if they're doing that, but the other three, they had such significant and even emotional deaths that bringing them back is kind of insulting. So then we get to the flashbacks of the episode, which might have been, or it was up there with my favorite parts of this episode. The flashbacks were so good. They definitely remind me of the Season 5, Episode 9 flashbacks, which showed Oliver and Diggle during the first couple episodes of Season 1, arguing about Oliver's methods. Oliver then goes to take down like a whole army of people before getting to the person he's trying to kill, who is severely negatively affecting the people of Star City or Starling City. At that point, the events of that specific, what's going on there, inspire the villain of the current episode, or maybe even the entire season. The exact same thing happened right here, where during the first couple episodes of Season 1, I'm guessing after the events of the killing of Justin Claiborne, Oliver and Diggle, they're arguing about Oliver's methods. Oliver goes to take down a whole army of people before going to kill the person he's trying to kill. He doesn't kill them in the end, but because he doesn't kill them, he comes back in the future and tries to get revenge on Oliver through his son. It's definitely very similar, and as much as I love the flashbacks in that episode during Season 5, I also love the ones here. The reason I love these flashbacks is, one, the tone of Season 1, the tone of the Season 5, Episode 9 flashbacks. I absolutely love that darker tone. The arguments between Oliver and Diggle are interesting, but also the fight scene here is quite possibly the greatest fight scene we've ever gotten from Arrow, and I don't say that lightly because Arrow has given us some great fight scenes, but this one is quite possibly the best. I just love the fight scenes where Oliver single-handedly takes down like a whole army of people, like he runs through them, shooting a couple of them, punching a couple of them, kicking them, slamming them against a wall or a pillar or something. It's so fun to watch, and it's so intense, and this episode, this fight scene, pulls it off perfectly. The choreography here is absolutely amazing. The cuts are very minimal, which is, in my opinion, the best type of fight scene, where one character is running through a whole group, a whole army of people, while there's like no cuts. This is something that Daredevil has perfected during Seasons 1, 2, and 3 during the entirety of that show. Arrow hasn't really ever gotten that close to the perfection of Daredevil's fight scenes, but it's gotten like close enough for Arrow itself, like during Season 7 during the prison episode, like at the end, or during this one where there are cuts, but they're incredibly minimal, or maybe they're hidden behind something else. It's absolutely amazing. It's exhilarating. And I think we could at the very least say that with its final episode, the show gave us probably its best fight scene ever. So for a while, this episode focuses on Team Arrow coming back together. Basically, every member who's ever been on the team that is still alive, meaning that Oliver and the Earth Prime or Earth 1 Laurels are not around. Also, Artemis isn't here, mainly because they couldn't bring her back, but also because on Earth 1 she was evil, and it did seem like she died. However, every other character who's ever been on the team is in this mission, and that was the main point of this, to bring Team Arrow back together for one final mission without Oliver. And this mission was to save William, who was kidnapped for like the third time in the present day, and then also in total 4 times that I remember him being kidnapped. He might have been kidnapped even more than that. It's crazy how William is still alive considering how often he's kidnapped. But I do think this whole storyline of basically every member of Team Arrow coming back together for one final mission, it worked perfectly for this season finale, since this season finale is not one that is like big bombastic climactic ending to the show. It's the epilogue basically to Oliver's death, and it's this one final mission within the epilogue, and I did really like that. There's also a lot of like character moments within this. There's Roy and Thea talking to each other. Roy actually proposes to Thea, and I guess to talk about this whole storyline here, I did really like it. I like the fact that they got back together. This is a couple that I definitely like. Like, obviously I don't really like a lot of couples on this show, specifically the main one, but I always like Thea and Roy together, so I'm glad they got their happy ending where they get to get married, and that's my opinion on that storyline. There's also a scene with Wild Dog and Ragman where we get to see Ragman again. I expected it to be retcon so that Ragman never lost his powers, but no, it's just that he got his powers back, and while we don't really get to see much of him, it definitely is cool to see Ragman again. I will say, however, that while all these characters are coming together, most of them got enough screen time. One of them really didn't, and that's Curtis Holt, Mr. Terrific. Definitely not my favorite character or anything, but I don't remember him getting a single line in the entirety of this episode episode. Like, he appears, he helps out a little bit, he never suits up or anything, and he doesn't get a single line. It was really, really weird what they did there, and I'm guessing he probably had a line in a deleted scene or something, because there's no way they would bring him back and not give him a single line, unless, again, I forgot the single line he did get. But overall, I did like this storyline quite a lot. I like this final mission of Team Arrow before they all go their separate ways. I think that it was a good conclusion to certain characters and character arcs, and I do think that it worked for the episode. I should also mention that during this storyline, there was a kind of a Batman reference. During the scene with Roy and Thea, there's a billboard in the background that says Van Wayne on it. Van Wayne in the comics is the cousin of Bruce Wayne, who mostly, the only thing he really ever did was appear on the Powerless TV show as one of the main characters and the owner of one of like the Wayne subsidiaries. But this, I guess you can call a Batman reference, as it is possible that in the Arrowverse, Van Wayne is related to Bruce Wayne and Kate Kane. We then learn the true origins of this version of Laurel in a scene between her and Quentin, where we learn that the Earth Prime Laurel did indeed die. She had the exact same storyline, except she did marry Tommy, since Tommy never died, but she was killed by Damien Darhk during the events of Arrow Season 4, and this is still the Earth 2 Laurel. Like, she's from the current Earth 2, which they don't know still exists, so she can't go back, but she's still from that universe, and she is that version of Laurel, which, again, I'm not a fan of this. I would have much preferred if she had the backstory of maybe the Earth 2 Laurel with the powers of the Earth 2 Laurel, but the whole story during Arrow maybe of the Earth 1 Laurel, or maybe she's from Earth Prime so that she never died. She has the power, she has the backstory, she has the personality of the Earth 2 Laurel, but she's from Earth Prime. That would have been, I think, way, way better. Basically a merger between the Earth 1 and Earth 2 Laurels brought into Earth Prime. That would have been way better than this, which I'm not a fan of. There's then a scene between Renee Diggle and Dinah, which is mainly there to tell us where Diggle is going next. Like, we already knew that Renee was going to stay in Star City and become mayor. We knew that Dinah was going to go to Star City in the future. We do learn that she's, I guess, intending to move to Metropolis for some reason, but we do know that that's not going to end up. She drives away from Star City later, but she does end up in the future after that. But Diggle, turns out he's moving to Metropolis, which maybe means that the show we're going to be seeing him on next is not the Green Lantern show. Other than the one episode he's going to appear on The Flash, he might be appearing on Superman and Lois, which takes place in Metropolis, and that is where he's moving, and he's going to be a Green Lantern there, so that could be very interesting. But I think that is what they're doing here, this scene specifically, where they say that Diggle is moving to Metropolis. Again, it could be significant. That's when we get to this Oliver Queen memorial scene, the memorial year for the Green Arrow, where Quentin gives a speech where he says that he initially didn't like Oliver, also didn't like the Hood, blamed him for everything, but it turns out that he was wrong. That was a great speech, and while, again, I'm not a fan of bringing Quentin back, I guess this couldn't have been done without him, and that led to something. This is a very, very good speech. It's great acting from the actor, and it's definitely pretty emotional before the unveiling of the Green Arrow statue, which is also really cool, and I'm glad that they did that here. And that's when we get to the actual funeral, and I think they handled the funeral very, very well, as well as they could possibly have done. I would have liked to see more characters, like more of the heroes that Oliver teamed up with during Crisis to appear, other than just Barry and Kara, and I guess also Sarah. But I think that with the possibility, with what they were able to do, it's actually pretty insane how many actors they did bring back. Like, I didn't expect Nyssa, Talia, or Kara to appear. Those ones were pretty significant surprises. I didn't know that the others would appear, but if I hadn't seen the pictures, I definitely would have been very surprised that the likes of Emiko, Moira, Tommy, actually Tommy was a big surprise as well, but also Barry and all those other actors that were brought back for this scene. It's pretty crazy that they were able to do that. And John's speech at the end also, it definitely really works, and it's pretty emotional. And I should say, it isn't specifically John's speech that's emotional, but it is the whole environment here, the funeral of Oliver Queen, that I do think brings out the emotion. And again, I think they pulled it off very well, not only with all the actors they were able to bring back, but where it's placed in the whole show, where it's placed in the episode, and the emotion of it all, the death of Oliver Queen, the funeral of Oliver Queen, I think was handled well in this episode. And finally, we get to what is arguably the highlight of the episode. I mean, the fight scene with Oliver in the flashback, that was awesome. The memorial for Oliver, or the funeral for Oliver, those were all great. But this scene is arguably the highlight. Diggle sees this ship, this spaceship, hurtling towards him, and it crash lands right in front of him, and he opens up a box, and he gets the Omnitrix. No, I'm kidding. He gets a Green Lantern ring, or what is seemingly a Green Lantern ring. I just think that this whole thing felt a lot more like Ben 10 than it did like Green Lantern, as like it just felt the exact same thing. I definitely expected for an actual Green Lantern ring to fly right next to Diggle, tell him that he can overcome fear, or great fear, and say that he's been chosen to be a Green Lantern. This is a little bit different. This might be as much as Warner Brothers allowed them to do in this episode, but still, this is awesome. This is so exciting, and maybe even going forward, we could see John Diggle as a Green Lantern, because he was arguably the main character of this episode. He was the main focus of this episode. He, I think, had more screen time than anyone else, and it felt like an episode that could be a good TV show. Like, he felt like a character who could hold his own TV show, especially as a Green Lantern. So that's something I really want to see. This moment was so exciting, and I do think that it lived up to all the hype or all the build-up that they've been giving us. Even though I would have preferred for him to get the Green Lantern ring in Crisis on Infinite Earths, I think this is the second best option. And that's when we get to the ending of the episode, where we go back to the ending of Season 7, where Felicity is taken by the Monitors to some specific place. Turns out the Monitor is alive, which they never really explain how the Monitor is still alive. But anyway, we go, Felicity is taken to where Oliver is, which is apparently in the afterlife, so he is indeed dead. And I guess now she is dead, so whoop-de-doo, Felicity finally died. But this is the only other thing that I didn't like about this episode. Again, I can't really complain, because we're not going to be seeing this actual storyline going forward, but this is not how I would have wanted Arrow to end, for Oliver and Felicity to be in the afterlife together, and that's it. That's the entirety of the ending. That's looking back, like while I was watching the show, I would have been really annoyed looking forward if this is how I knew Arrow was going to end. However, it's not really that significant. Like, looking at it now, it's not really that bad. It's not really that detrimental to this episode, because again, this is just the ending. We're not going to be getting any more of this going forward. However, I don't really like this. I also don't like that certain characters were brought back to life, but I do think that for the most part, this was a good ending to Arrow, and I do think that it was a lot better than certain other TV shows that didn't stick the landing, which is pretty crazy to me. So in conclusion, I thought this episode was very good. There are certain things I don't love, but it was emotional. It was a great epilogue to the show, and it was a finale that really stuck the landing. And of course, it had some great fight scenes. The Green Lantern thing at the end was absolutely awesome, and great conclusions to certain characters. With that in mind, I'll give it a 9.3 out of 10. It's not perfect. I don't think it's anywhere near the best episode of Arrow ever, but it is a very good ending. So anyway, let me know your thoughts about the series finale of Arrow in the comments down below, and if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.